Okay, so today's skill set is raising fractions to higher names. Now again, sometimes when working with fractions, it's very important that we know how to put a fraction into its lower name. At other times, it's very important that we know how to raise a fraction to its higher name. So, the fraction 2/5 is equal to how many 20ths? How many 20ths? Well, the way you do that is you divide 5 into 20. How many times will 5 go into 20? Well, 5 will go into 24 times, or 5 times 4 is equal to 20. So if I multiply this by 4, then I multiply this by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. So 2/5, if I turn it into a fraction with a denominator of 20, 2/5 is equal to 8 20ths. 8 20ths. And now, what I have to say to myself is, well, is this fraction now in its lowest name? Is there any number that will go evenly into 8? And the same number will go evenly into 20? Well, obviously 4. And if I divide by 4, I get back to 2/5. Okay? But that's not the point. The skill that we're interested in right now is taking a fraction that's in its lowest name and putting it in a higher name. Because in working in addition and subtraction and working with multiplication and division of fractions, this is an important skill. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Okay, we have 9/10. And I want to change it into a fraction that has a denominator that's 20. Well, 10 times what number gives me 20? 10 times 2. So if I multiply 10 times 2, I get 20. Then I have to multiply 9 times 2. And that gives me 18. So 9/10, when I change it to its higher name with 20 as a denominator, is 18 20ths. Take a look at another one. Let's try this one. 1/6, and I want to change it into a fraction whose denominator is 18. Well, 6 times what number will give me 18? 6 times what number? 6 times 3 will give me 18. So now I multiply 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And 1/6, if I change it to a higher name whose denominator is 18, is equal to 3/18. And of course, by the way, you know that if I reduced 3/18, I'd divide by 3 and divide by 3, and I'd get back to 1/6. So, to change a fraction to a higher name, you multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. To reduce a fraction to its lowest name, you divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. Good, we'll take a look at a couple more. Okay, we have the fraction 5/8, and we want it to raise it to a higher name whose denominator is 32. Well, what number do I multiply 8 by to get 32? Well, I multiply 8 by 4, because 8 times 4 is 32. So if I multiply 8, then I multiply this by 4. 5 times 4, 20. So 5/8, when I change it to a fraction whose denominator is 32, 5/8 is equal to 20 32nds. Good. Okay, here are 4 problems. Problem 1, 2/3 is equal to how many 21sts? Problem 2, 9/11 is equal to how many 66ths? Problem 3, 5/9 is equal to how many 45ths? And problem 4, 3/4 is equal to how many 44ths? What I'd like you to do is to put the DVD on pause, work these problems in your notebook, and then when you're finished, turn the DVD back on, and we'll go over them. Okay, go ahead. Okay, well, let's take a look at the first one. 2/3, and we need to change it into a fraction whose denominator is 21st, so 21. Well, 3 times what number gives me 21? Well, 3 times 7 will give me 21, so I have to multiply 2 times 7, which would give me 14. So when I change 2/3 into a fraction whose denominator is 21sts, it's 14 21s. And by the way, this and this are exactly the same amount. They are exactly the same amount. This is just in a higher name. If you had 2/3 of a dollar, or if you had 14 21/21 of a dollar, you would have exactly the same amount of money. You'd have 66 cents. So they're just raising it to a different name. Let's look at number 2. 9/11 equals how many 66ths? Well, 11 times what number will give me 66? Well, 11 times 6 will give me 66. So if I multiply this times 6 to get 66, then I have to multiply this by 6. Then 9 times 6 is 54. Because it's very important that you know your multiplication tables for working with any kind of mathematics. It's just critical. You have to know them. So 9/11, if I change it to a fraction whose denominator is 66, is 54 66ths. Good, let's take a look at, we'll erase this so it's not so cluttered. And let's take a look at this. 5/9. If I want to change it into a fraction whose denominator is 45, well, 9 times what number is 45? Well, 9 times 5 is 45. So then I have to multiply 5 times 5, and that gives me 25. So 9/5 raised to its highest name is 25 45ths. And the last one, 3/4. I want to raise it to a fraction whose a higher name, and its denominator is 44. Well, 4 times what number gives me 44? Well, 4 times 11 gives me 44, so then 3 times 11 gives me 33. So I have an equivalent fraction, 3/4 and 33 44ths. They're the exact same amount, but this is in a higher name. Well, good. Okay, so the skill here is renaming a fraction or raising a fraction to its higher name. And you'll see in a couple of lessons that this, raising a fraction to its higher name, and reducing a fraction to its smaller name are two very important skills that are necessary for being able to add and subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. Well, thank you very much. Why don't you shut off the DVD and bring up your notebook and let me see and how you did. If you're not in class, if you're working at home, well then obviously you can't bring your notebook up to me. But when I see you again, show me your work.